Jeremy, thank you so much for joining being a guest today on the Think Small podcast. Really looking forward to today's conversation. The background on your company, I revisited our pre-call conversation, and I think the nature of our conversation was just really relaxed and was, but then I kept listening to your story, and it blew me away. It really did. So, so let's jump right in, right? Tell us about the origin of how you got started and the company that you've grown.
Sure. So, crazy. It is a crazy story. And, it started with me way back in the day, wanting to be an engineer, mechanical engineer. And so that's the path I chose and went through college for that, went through junior college and then transferred and went to 4-year college and then got a degree and then actually went and got a job doing it, and realized pretty quickly that like I enjoyed the art side of things a little bit more than I did the mechanical engineering side of things, drawing, doing that kind of stuff. Look forward to do that part of the job, but the analytical side of things, all of that stuff just started to get to me after a while. And so 22 years in, I just felt the stresses of, a daily life of an engineer, and really trying to get those things rationalized in my head. Is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? And so I was searching for other things to do. And my son decided to start a clothing line when he was 16 years old. Being a dad, I just was like, and I coached football before, so I knew about screen printing and how much it costs. And I'm like, listen, we could probably figure this out and you could actually make some money on it. So I went and built a press because that's what engineers do. Found plans online and built it out of scrap lumber over Christmas. And we started printing shirts, had no clue what we were doing. And, just as a side hustle, little hobby for my son, really. And we sold about 100 shirts. And I quickly realized that I really didn't know what I was doing. He didn't really know what he was doing. So we decided just to go ahead, and I took a day off of work and went and took a screen printing class. And I really fell in love with the process and decided to go ahead and buy a starter package. It was like $7,000 starter package. And when I did that, I came home and I told him, hey, I think I want to, do a little side hustle with this. It cost me $7,000 to do. If you buy in for $500, because he had made a little money. So you buy in for $500 and we'll do this as a side hustle. We'll have some fun. And I don't know, we'll put it out there to church and people that we know, we can do your screen printing. And he did not take an interest in actually printing the shirts. So I found myself printing the shirts a lot. And I started to get some business from the church people. And ironically enough, third job in, I learned how to bid a little bit on larger projects and bid on the University of South Carolina's baseball team's opening day shirts. It was like a 6,000 piece order. And I bid on it and I got it. And then I was like, oh crap, now what do I do? Because I had this little manual four station machine. I was not going to do that by hand. So I subbed it out, did not print a thing on that job, but sold it anyways. Still made a $9,000 profit on the job, paid off my equipment in the third job, and was like, okay, there's something to this. Fast forward another year, we're just doing a side hustle. And I was like, man, this is where I was working for 40, 50 plus hours a week, overtime, holidays, all this stuff. And then these projects were, either not fulfilling from the engineering side of the world, from my boss's perspective, or if it was just whatever it was, it just seemed like it was like a what have you done for me lately mentality in the engineering world, all stress, and then that was great. You made that work. Now do something else. Like it was never satisfying to me. And so I was like, you know what? Told my wife, I'm going to quit my job. We're going to try doing the screen printing thing. What's the worst that can happen? And we'll just go back to being an engineer. And so she thought I was crazy. Most of the people I knew thought I was crazy. But again, I just had like this idea that I could make this work. And so, yeah, we jumped in, got a little small. We took it from a spare bedroom to a garage, opened up a little 500 square foot facility. That quickly grew to 1,000 square foot to 3,000 square foot to 5 to 7 to 12. And now we're in a 12,000 square foot 10 years later. And we turned a little side hustle into a couple $1 million business.
Yeah, that it is. Right? Like when you think of the scope, right? I mean, it starts off as this like, hey, why not? And then now it's taken on a life of its own. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is. It has. It wasn't easy. I had me and my wife kind of joked around. We had this like mission vision of just let's go ahead and pay the bills. That was the mission. That was the vision. My son quickly didn't want to do it anymore, so it was literally just me for a good while. But I had a background in I could draw, and I taught myself Adobe Illustrator, taught myself Photoshop and all that stuff. So you learned a software. That's what I found out engineering was too. You learn a software, the computers these days and the things you can find and learn. And even the software is just so powerful that, you're not sitting doing math all the time to figure things out. You're testing things out on computers and getting them to work in real time 3D. So I was learning already how to do all that stuff. I did it for 22 years. So I was a machine designer. And so I was like, I can convert things into Adobe Illustrator and draw things. So that was fun to me. And so I was just having fun. And honestly, the first year and a half, 2 years, I was like, there was nothing in my intention to grow the company. My intention was not to compete with local screen printers or, anywhere in the vicinity. I was like, that'll never happen. I may, employ one person over, and it ended up first person was my wife. And then it quickly became, well, I need a printer. Oh, I need an automatic printer. I need I need someone to clean screens. I need somebody to do some embroidery, and we started growing the business. And then, got probably 6 years in when we hit like kind of like this upward kind of momentum in the industry and got nationally recognized. And from that point forward, it was like a rocket ship of growth and popularity in the industry, and started a podcast, got recognized by some major manufacturers. And we've parlayed that whole experience through the podcast and everything else. And now we find ourselves 10 years later. I partnered with one business, who became a co-owner in the business with me, along with my wife. So we have 3 owners at Rockhill Printing. And we also inherited a company that had needed to be rescued. Basically, we helped rescue them and their customers, and we took on a lot of their employees. So we grew from over one weekend, a couple of years ago, we grew from an 8-employee company to 16 employees, 3 companies in one, and basically doubled our growth in that month and a half, and then just took it from there. So that's where we started jumping. Fast growing, I do not recommend it at all. Grow slow, but especially if you're going to try something new. But absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about that, right? I mean, you go from being the practitioner, right, the person that's doing the work, the art, and then now you've moved into this managerial CEO role where you have an employee, you have multiple employees. What is that like? How does that change the dynamic as the business owner?
It changes it. It absolutely changes it. And you gotta think, that's where most people either make or break their businesses. I feel like it's that whole perspective where you get stuck working in the business and you have no opportunity to work on the business. It took a business coach to tell me to start just jotting down what I did every 5 minutes. He said, start every 15 minutes, but get down to 5 minutes. I did that for 3 days, and I realized that 90% of my workday was spent doing art. And he's like, how are you ever going to grow your business? How are you ever going to, do anything else? Understand your numbers. understand what you're making, be able to, regulate pricing, figure it all out, be more efficient in the way you're doing things, start to build this franchise model. That whole E-Myth book helped out a lot when I was really doing some research into it. But then what I found was you had to have a lot of trust in people that when you did the job yourself, you had to let go of that and actually give trust to other people. And that was a hard thing to do. I feel like that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. And what I understood then was, okay, I've never had time to write processes out. I've never had time to do anything to really develop a system of doing it right. I just did it my way. And so I had to create those processes and get things in place so that ultimately all those employees could do it for me. And I don't find myself stuck in the business anymore. Like, I can take a vacation. I can leave when I want to leave and trust that the company is going to continue to move forward. And that's, if you want that in a business, in an entrepreneurial business that you want to create and go forth doing, you have to be able to let go of those things, those day-to-day operations, and really trust others to do that. And so that's key. That was huge in our growth. That was huge in us being able to make more money. That was huge in us having a personal life. There's a lot of that. And so that E-Myth book is a good one to read. Hiring a business coach is a godsend. Really, it helped us understand how to do business, because I went to school to be an engineer. I didn't go to school to do business, to start my own business, so.
Yeah, I got to imagine that, like, it's a second career for you. And, probably not in your wildest dreams did you think that you would have, 18 employees at any point.
No, I remember. So I have a buddy who started a business too, super successful, completely different industry. But I called him one day and I said, I got a dumpster. I was so excited. I got a dumpster. I was like, it's getting big time now. I'm like excited that I got a dumpster. And then he goes, yeah. And he goes, how many employees you up to now? And he's like, they depend on you. And I was like, man, you said those words, and it just really hit me like, oh my gosh, like, they do depend on me. Like, they're live, like they're living the way they live, their livelihood or whatever else is solely dependent on me making this business successful and keeping it running so that they can have a job and that they can, have families and do their thing. And so that was a big reality check for me to understand that, to take that to heart, and then really want the companies to succeed for my employees, not necessarily just for me.
Yeah, no, it's like, it's that amount of pressure really, honestly, probably pushed you further out of that, like out of the role of an employee and really more into the role of CEO, right? It's like the realization that, hey, these people are really depending on me. Their financial security, their livelihood is dependent on this company doing well. I really need to, if I'm going to take on that role of responsibility, then I really need to assume that hat, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that you've all seen the nightmares on all the reality TV shows of the businesses that are like, the bar rescue and the crazy chef shows where they're just like restaurant nightmares and all that, where the people have no clue what they're doing. They have no processes, and it's just like a crazy zoo of a business. And, they have to have people come in and save them. I mean, that could be in any situation that you do, like any company that you own. If you don't take those things seriously, you could end up like that. And that's why I said most people fail. The entrepreneurship journey usually only lasts about 3 years.
We had a guest on the podcast just the other day, Tom from Big Sky Franchising, and he was talking about some of the recipes for success. And one of his key criteria is the like processes, right? Having them written out down to the tooth, making sure that you've really outlined exactly how the job is supposed to be done. So that way, you can hand it to somebody and say, who doesn't know anything about, for instance, screen printing. If I applied
Yeah.
for your job, I should be able to read an instruction manual.
Absolutely.
And basically, based off
Yeah.
of what you've set out, and get that job done.
And one of the things we started doing here for that specific reason was because, I think a lot of people struggle to hire. And it's, and if you don't have the processes in place, like you're hiring and they think it's a total joke because you don't have your act together. If you don't have the time as an owner to train them or have the right people in place to train them, right? Like, how are they going to ever learn that position? And you just throw them to the wolves and you just set them up to fail, right? Like, here, print this job. I've never operated a machine before. And that's the reality. You don't go get screen printers with, like a ton of knowledge and experience because they just don't exist. We have a specialty industry. People are usually artsy that like to do it. They got to love to work with their hands. They got to love to get dirty. They got to love to work in the heat. But, we set our dryers at 700 degrees. There's no air conditioning that competes with that, right? Like,
right.
And it's not that hot, but that's a factor. The ambient air is warm. So all those things, it's hard to find people to work for you. So you do have to get your act in an order, where we started a certification program. We're like, listen, in order to work as a shop assistant, we need you to learn every single aspect of the company as far as what it takes to make a t-shirt. Turns out it's not that easy to make a t-shirt. There's like 19 steps involved in it. And just show them that first, and then go, is this something you want to be a part of? Is this something you want to do? And then, all right, we hire them in on a temporary basis, and we say, all right, work in it. We'll do a working job interview for a week, and then we'll start them on a certification. And that certification is just learn every single thing that goes into making a shirt. And when you do that, check it off the box. And when you complete that, we'll take a little test, and you'll be certified as a production assistant at Rockhill Screen Printing. Give them a certificate. I actually have a certificate here. I don't know if you can see that or not. So like a certificate saying you've completed your steps. And it's a proud moment, honestly, for a lot of these people that take this stuff. They're like, all right, I can, because they can use that on their resume, right? They can take it, say, hey, I was certified shop assistant. I know how to do everything in the shop. And then you do the next level, which is learn how to be a printer. And you do the same exact thing for the printer. And now you've took them through every single step of the process and trained them in every single thing that you can train them in, and made them take tests on it, and you give them the tools they need and the training they need, and then they're successful. And then, then you can leave them alone to do their job and trust that they're actually going to do it the right way.
Yeah.
So we had to do that, right? Like, because otherwise,
yeah, you were destined for failure for sure. If you leave it up
100%.
to, blind leading the blind at that point, right? I know that we talked a little bit about, you'd recently ran a workshop where you had screen printers from around the region, around the country, come to your location and then actually kind of see how you do what you do. So it feels like that you put in the groundwork on, outlining all these processes. You've got this certificate program for your new employees, and then you naturally were able to then expand that to, hey, I can help others outside of my role. Right?
And you got to have the right mentality. I think that you could easily get into this, we call it the good old boy network, especially when it's down south here in South Carolina, where companies are competing. It's like they're dog and cat. They're going against, they want to put you out of business, right? And we were like, we want to have that brewer's mentality where if you go into any craft brewery, and you can do it in any state, go into any craft brewery, they're buddies with all the brewers around town. They have one thing in common. They're just making beer, right?
Right.
And they go and support each other. In fact, you'll find them there having a beer with them, or going in collaboration with them. And I'm like, why can't that be the same in my world? Why can't that be a screen printing, the same as everybody else, as that brewer mentality? And so I purposely wanted to network and get to know what I would classify as competitors, but I'm not calling them the competitors anymore. I'm calling them, partners in the industry. Like if they got jobs and I'm not trying to steal those jobs away from them. I'm like, yes, print local. I don't care who you use. Use somebody local. Let's support the local economy. Rising tides raises all ships. And so with that mentality moving forward, people were like, wait a minute, you'll teach me to do things better? Then like I can come and actually tour your shop and see everything that you do. And I'm like, yeah, I'm an open book, man. Come on over. So we've had open houses where shops, like you said, come in and they learn how to do things better. We've gotten to where we become a hub for that. So we had something called the Print Homey Playbook back in May. And we ended up with 42 shops from all around the country. And one of the classes I took was, what I taught was purposeful production management. And that's basically how to set up your shop to run effectively, efficiently, to, arrange your equipment in a certain way. A lot of the lean manufacturing practices that I used in engineering, I just parlayed those experiences and that education into the screen printing world and developed steps and standards. So the processes that we have in place, people are like, I need to do that. I need to do that. And then they've come in and said, hey, I organize ink this way with the catalog system. And I'm walking away going, when they leave, I'm doing it too. Like we're learning from each other. Right. And we will all be better off that way than not doing it that way, right? Like putting each other out of business is not the way. We make up these rules to the game, and there are no rules. The rules are only what we make them up to be, right? Like, so I'm trying to change the rules and go, hey, we can all do this. We can all be friends. We can all be successful. And so helping other shops out was that original mentality, right? And that's kind of made us even more popular in the industry, and people see that. And they're like, oh, our product sells itself. It's such a cool place to be, to hang out. So that was the goal. And that's what we created.
Nice. One of the things that you said, it really kind of sparked something. It might be a little bit of a curveball, was around shop local, right? And I love that I always try to shop local if I can, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how rise in costs has impacted your business, and how you maybe, tried to work around that, try to keep your costs low with tariffs. And I don't know how much of that has been really affected you or not, but I am really curious about how you've tried your best in the last year or so deal with the sort of economy of rising prices.
I think that you can look in any t-shirt that you own, any clothing that you own, and where is it 90% made at? It's in India, China, Honduras, Guatemala. Those places are, and that's why the reason why I live in a textile town, South Carolina. Rockhill, South Carolina was one of the home of bleaching and textiles in the industry. We were the first city to print on sheets that made it out into, like, put decorated sheets out. And all that textile moved out in the 90s and went to Mexico and all overseas. And that's where it's at now. So the reality is every single shirt that we purchase, with the exception of maybe 2 brands, is made outside the US or processed outside the US. The cotton's grown in the US, made outside the US. All the popular brands are. So yeah, we got hit with tariffs right away. But I think consumers locally and throughout the industry got hit with the same tariffs. Like it's not any surprise, but a lot of the ink supplies come from Canada. So it's hard to find anything made in the USA in this industry. Right. The equipment's even made in Poland and all these other locations. So it's, yes, tariffs has affected the people purchasing equipment. In this last year, we've had to reassess how we deal with purchasing equipment. We went and bought an embroidery machine this year. We purchased it used from another, shop in Alabama. So you start to change the way you do business and adapt, so that and explain. If you're honest and transparent with your customer base, it's okay. It ends up working out. Right. But we did cut back on some things. We just stopped carrying some things. We stopped offering things. We reassessed our business and said, where can we still make money and it not really be affected? The embroidery was a huge thing for us because it's just the margins were there. We're like, let's grow that and let's see how things pan out,
Right. And I guess it talks to also like making sure that you're really dialing in on, your RFP process, right? Like when somebody approaches you, it's like, all right, like, let's actually make sure that we are correctly quoting this and correctly bidding on this. So that way we can operate, on those margins that we've already sort of budgeted for.
Yeah.
Right?
And for sure. Yeah. So this year we invested in a software called Print Profit. We were thinking that we needed to hire a fractional CFO. My wife did the CFO basically processes. She's been doing books and things like that. But we had to hire a better accountant when we took on a partnership. We had to hire lawyers and things like that. And then we were like, we need to understand our money better because we didn't really understand our money and the way it worked. And we got introduced to a guy who fractional CFO. He was actually on the other podcast, you guys, the Think podcast or
Think Factory.
Think Factory. He was on Think Factory. Nick Garlic from Print Profit. And so he fractional CFO, he helps you understand your numbers. So then we were like able to see, okay, here's our fixed cost. And, a lot of people don't put labor into their fixed costs. Like they think, to keep the machines running, we'll make more money, And the reality is you pay the people the same amount of money every week, whether you don't pay them on output, you pay them by hourly. So that whole thing, us understanding that and then really developing that kind of budget to see what the hump in the hill had to be to get over that to start making profit, changed the way we started selling. We could push jobs out that we knew, that we could make a lot of profit on, but we would cover our cost if we took these jobs now. And so we would try to make deals and say, hey, we can offer it to you 10 cents cheaper 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now if you want to wait. And you can save and get that lower price. But we knew that we were going to get over that hump and that whole job was going to be 100% profit.
Nice.
So it's like, it made us change the way we think. And so, yes, to answer your question from earlier is basically, yeah, we had to start planning that way to understand our money, to make money. When we were in that situation where we found ourselves like what these costs could really put
I love it. I love
down,
thinking about it from a strategic standpoint is like, how can you, it's all about planning. It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
Understanding your numbers. Like not many businesses understand like 100%. They might trust somebody to do it for them, but does an owner, founder really truly understand, how much money he's making or losing? He doesn't usually find that out until the bank tells him, right? Or somebody, the accountant goes, you owe this much in taxes. And you're like, oh no, so. Yeah.
Suppose there's a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. I mean, maybe one of the first obstacles that you approached, I know that we talked a little bit about, you went from 6 employees to 18 employees over the course of a weekend. So you can tell us a little bit about that, but then I'd also really love to learn a little bit about some of the first hurdles of becoming a, small to medium sized employer, right? Like, what is that like?
The things I didn't know is that when you take on that many employees, there's a lot of risk in that and you have to feed the beast, right? Like, so that was the concern, was feeding the beast and bringing in as many jobs as possible to be able to pay them. Like, that was the thing. Like, we got to double and triple our sales just to be able to employ these people, and could easily make you like tired really fast. And you start to hate your job, right? Like, you start to lose the perspective on why you did this in the first place, and like running a business effectively and efficiently, all that kind of goes out the window, and you're just worried, like you're panicking about what the payroll is going to look like next week. Yeah. And you can't do that, right? there is growing pains in growing that fast. And like I said before, I wouldn't recommend it because we took on a partnership at the same time. So like we're trying to learn each other as a partnership, and how to work together, and the anxiety levels were super high for that time period. Again, it was that whole pressure of, how are these people going to make a living? How are we going to make a living? Blah, blah, blah. So like that whole thing was, there was those struggles. And then there was, for me, it was production wise. How do I keep these people from standing around looking at their phone all the time, and like, then it became, once I got past that, it was like, how can we do this faster with less employees? Like, do I need 16 employees to do this job? You start to question yourself. Like, does it really take that many people to do this? And so we started to improve processes and really think about the steps that we were taking to complete that job. And you start to realize that you can, you read the 2-second lane and all the different things, and you realize that you can do that same job in way less steps, in way quicker, way more effectively, And so we started to implement those processes and we had maybe 10, 12 people in the shop. We went down to 6, did the same amount of work. In fact, did it better with 6 employees than we did 12. And that was through attrition. We didn't really fire anybody unless they were asking to be fired, doing stupid stuff. Right. But we just found that we could do it better. Right? We dialed it in. Yeah. And so those things you just have to learn. And that's all by trial and error, honestly. I mean, it's figuring out what works for your business. So that was a struggle we went through, growing fast, paying those people. You start, like I talked about numbers before, like you start to see like your percentage of wages every month versus your income. And you're like, you start to get over that, like 35% of your monthly income is spent on payroll wages and employee wages. You like start to question those things. Are people making too much? Are people not making it enough? And that the economy has a lot to do with that. So again, money was a big one as well. I think that's with everybody, right? Those standard struggles when you're doing a business like this, you'll run into, especially with that fast growth. The benefit is you make more money, right? So, but then you almost we came together last year and we're like, how much more do we want to grow? Like, it was nice, but like, what's the sweet spot? Where do we got to hit to enjoy it, but not feel like we're working our butts off, right? Like, and so we were trying to find that. So, but I think those are the key things that we struggled with right off the get and had to overcome, learn how to be business partners and not just friends anymore. So, yeah.
So I always like to sort of end these on a really positive note. And that kind of leads me into my last question, because you had mentioned about how big do I want to get, right? But I suppose the question I always like to end these on is, what are you really looking forward to in the next, let's say, the tail end of this year or in the next 6 to 12 months?
I think I enjoy where we're at now because I feel like we've figured out some of the key things that makes us run more efficiently. And if we can like take those processes and like continue to work on the business to get every single department dialed in like that, I think that's the goal, right? We focused on production last year. We focused on certain departments. What I loved, what we did last year is we went on an ownership retreat and we picked things that we wanted to focus on this upcoming year, and we accomplished all those things. So I'm looking forward to actually doing that again at the end of this year and accomplishing those things next year. And then, then you start to look at 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, like, what does it look like to sell this place? What's the next thing look like? Right. Mm-hmm. Like, and so not that we want it to go out of business or do like, our employees to be afraid of that, but that's the natural progression, right? Like, you start a business, you grow a business to sell a business, and you go do something else or you enjoy, the fruits of all that hard work you put in. So that's what I'm looking forward to, taking more vacations, right?
Yeah.
Spending more time with the family.
Well, I think you definitely earned it. I mean, you've told us a lot about, the amount of effort that you put in to get this business to where it's at. It definitely is the natural next step is to take one step even further back, right? Like to take one step further out.
Yeah.
And let it run.
Yeah. And honestly, like I was a joke 2 years ago when I hired the business coach, 2 or 3 years ago when I hired the business coach. He was like, do you see yourself ever going on vacation and enjoying life and going traveling with your family around the country and doing all this stuff? And I'm like, that's blue sky, man. I'm not anywhere near there. And now, like 2-3 years later, now that I put in that work, I'm like, ooh, I see it. I see it. It's actually getting really close.
Yeah.
So that's rewarding, and I definitely look forward to that.
That's awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time today and for your time the other day. And it's just been a real pleasure getting to know you. And I really do appreciate you being a guest today on the Think Small podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Alex, and good luck with the show, man. I'm excited to see where you guys take this thing.
Yeah, appreciate it.